Alright, this is a tutorial on Vectorworks and how to print, how to set up your file, and how to bring georeference objects into your project. Okay, so we're going to start with creating a new project in Vectorworks. So we're going to go File, New, and then create blank document is fine. Click OK. Alright, so a quick overview of what you have available in Vectorworks. You have the snapping tools, which allows you to snap to different objects in your plane. You have your basic tools. These ones allow you to draw and modify objects in your project. Tool sets, these are a little bit more specific to different tasks. So for example, we have site planning, irrigation, building shell, as well as dims and nodes, which I'm going to use later on. We have attributes, so anytime you do just draw an object in your plane, you can change its attributes using this window here. We have the navigation here, which is it shows you your different classes, your layers. I'm going to talk about the difference between those two. Your sheet layer, which whenever you are ready to print, you have to design. You have to create a sheet layer so that your drawings can be set up properly as a construction drawing. I'm gonna show you how to do that. Viewports, which again I'm gonna talk about later on because they go in tangent with in tandem with your print sheets. And these two are for 3D, so I'm not gonna use those. And then your object info. So whenever you bring something into your workplace, or if you sketch it, all the attributes attached to that object are gonna be showing up in this window. On top here is where you can change in between views between your all your design layers or your sheet layers, and you have your scale and some of the 3D tools that we're not gonna touch on. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is set up our units. To do that, we're gonna go File, Document Settings, Units. In here you can set up in whichever units you want to use. I'm comfortable with meters, so I'm going to set up as meters, and I usually change the decimal precision to 0.1 just to be more accurate, and then click OK. Next thing that we're going to set up is the georeferencing. So the educational version of Vectorworks is a bit limited, but it still allows you to bring georeference documents into your project and plot it in an accurate way. So to set up those settings, we're going to go into File, Document Settings, Georeferencing. In the projection, it's where we're going to try to find the coordinate system that the city of Winnipeg uses. So from previous tutorials, we learned that Winnipeg uses the NAD 27 UTM Zone 14 North. So in order to find that, we're going to go in here in projection. We're going to select well-known text, and then we're going to look for the CRS lookup and let it load. Vectorworks has a huge list of coordinates, so it takes a little longer. So here we're going to type NAD 27 just to narrow it down a little bit further, and then I'm going to go look for UTM Zone 14. NAD 27 UTM Zone 14 North. Click OK. And make sure that this is clicked on, and then click OK. Now, anytime you create a new layer in here, which by the way, to create a layer, you right click on the space here and click New. It's gonna be set up with the defaults, which means you have to manually turn on the georeferencing on that layer, especially if you want to bring something that is georeferencing to that layer. You have to first make sure that it's on. To do that, you highlight the layer, right click, and then click on Edit, and then you have to check off the georeference box, which now is going to take on the coordinate system that we previously set up, and then click OK. Alright, so next I'm going to show you guys the difference between layers and classes. So the way I think about it is the layers is where the object is located, and the classes is how how those objects are gonna look. So for instance, I'm gonna do a new layer here. I'm gonna call it tiles, and I'm gonna set it up on my scale at 1 to 500, and I'm gonna create simple tiles just to show an example. All right, so as you can see, all my tiles are under one layer, but say I want my upper tiles to be different from the lower tiles, and I don't want to go changing individual tiles at once. So what I'm going to do is going to create classes for them, and then I'm going to put these objects into those classes so that they take on the attributes that I want to give them. In order to do that, we're going to go into the top here in the layer, click on it, and then we're going to go into the classes tab. By default, these two classes exist in Vectorworks, and so don't touch them. That's the way that Vectorworks work. But we're going to create a new one. We're going to call this upper. Click OK, and then make sure there is a check on it because we're going to edit it now. So highlight it, click the check, edit. Make sure this use at creation is checked in, because now whenever you bring a new element into that class, it's going to take on those attributes. So make sure that is on, and then I'm going to modify this because I want the upper tiles to have a pattern. So I'm going to put it with this pattern, and then I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to create a new one for the lower. So I'm going to call these ones lower. Again, make sure that is selected, edit, use at creation, and then I want it to have a pattern or a hatch, and I'm gonna leave the hatch as is, and I'm gonna click. Okay, all right. So now, if you click in the object and your object info, you can see where it's located. So now it's on layers, but it has no class selected to it. So I'm gonna highlight all the upper ones, and I'm gonna switch classes here, and I'm gonna put it with the upper. And it's gonna warn me that some of the attributes are gonna change, the graphic attributes, and I want that to happen, so I click yes. And now all of them take on that attribute from that class. And I'll do the same from the bottom. Go with lower. Again, the warning, but that's what I want, and there. And as you can tell, all of these tiles are in the one layer, but they all have a different class now, and that class dictates how they look, and that's the difference between the two of them. It's very helpful because if you have a huge project where you need to change 100 different objects, you can do it simply by modifying the class instead of going through the 100 objects individually. Now I'm going to show you guys the 3 options that Vectorworks has, and those have their own classes on their own already, so I don't usually try to modify any of those because they're very complex classes. So what I do is just putting in different layers, but usually I leave the classes as is. So I'm going to show you guys why. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it trees. As you can see now, the new layer took on the default setting, so it's a 1:1. So I have to change that to 1:100. And the layer options gives you different kinds of ways of viewing the other layers. So for instance, oh, and there is another thing that I forgot to remind you guys. So now, as you can see, I just wanted to draw a circle, but it took on the class that I selected last. So in order to prevent that to happen, you go into your classes and then click on none. Make sure it's selected. So now if I make another circle now, it takes on none of the attributes from that class. Right, so going back to the layers. So there is different ways that you can see your layer. The default is gray and snap others, which means all of my other layers that are not active is going to be grayed out, but you're going to be able to snap. to the different objects on different layers. There is also active only, which only is going to highlight the one that that is active right now. Gray others, which is similar to the first one, but this one doesn't allow you to snap to anything. And then we also have show others, which now it shows me the pattern and different textures of the other layers, but again, it doesn't allow me to connect to them. And it won't let me also modify them either. And then we have show snap others. Now I'm able to snap to all these other objects in different layers. Again, I'm still not able to modify them. And the last one is show snap others, where you can actually modify and move all of the objects that are on your project, even though they have different layers. So it's very useful, but also be very careful with this. So I usually leave it as show snap to others. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you guys the 3 options here. So if you go into the site planning and then click on plant, now your options are going to be in the top here. And in here, you can select the different kind of plants that you have. They have very basic drawings, but they also have actual species. Which is great because the attributes on those are already set up for the spread and how far apart they have to be and the canopy size and everything. So for now, I'm just going to stick with the basic. I'm going to use this basic tree here. And I'm going to use, there is different ways that you can use this tool. You can set up as single trees, as a row trees, as an edge, or different patterns. But for now, we're going to do a single tree here, and I'm going to create a row trees here. Oh, there. And I'm going to use a different kind of tree now. I'm going to use an evergreen, and I'm going to use one here. Oh, sorry, I'm going to use a single evergreen, and then I'm going to use a row of them, or a grouping of them. Now, if I want to highlight that these are a grouping, by default, you can, when you click one, all of them are going to be highlighted. But if I'm going to make it graphically shown that is a grouping, you can go into your object info, look for the polygon display, and then center solid. So now there's going to be a line joining them, showing that this is actually a grouping of trees, and I'll do the same with these guys too on the top. So polygon display, center solid. Okay, so now all of the trees are in one layer, but they all have different classes already attached to them. And the way I'm going to show you guys the difference, how that works, is that if I modify this tree, I'm going to end up modifying the entirety of this hedge of trees here because it's the same tree. So whatever you change in one tree is going to change the other ones. So I'm going to show you guys an example. So say if I want to change the color, I double click here. And then it's going to ask you which part of the plant do you want to modify, 2D, 3D, definition, or path, and we're going to go with 2D. Now it's isolating the tree, and see for the color they have gradient. So say if I want to change the gradient, you click on this little box here, and then click on the arrows, and say if I want full gradient, I double click on that, click OK, and as you can see, it has changed the color. But now when I exit the plan settings, now all of the trees that are of the same species, they call it, are going to change as well. So that's why these plants that are in Vectorworks already have their own classes, and that's why I don't like to touch them, because they already work really well. Another example that I was going to show you guys here is like if I want to change the spacing of these plants, you can click on them, and then in here you go edit plant definition, and in the spacing, say I'm gonna do something ridiculous like 15 meters spacing. Click OK. Now you see that they're still in the same length of that path, but the spacing of the trees has changed, so it accommodates for that change, which is great. And there is many different settings that you can change or replace the plant if you want to, but that's how you work with these plants. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna do is to set up your drawing for printout. So for this, the first thing that we need to do is to set up a sheet. So to do that, we're gonna go here on the top, click on layer, and then go on sheet layers, and then new. I'm gonna leave it as that. Click OK. In here, make sure that you change your raster rendering DPI to at least 200. The default is 71 for some reason, but it's not good enough if you're gonna be rendering trees, especially if you're gonna render trees like the ones that I just showed you. So click OK. Oh, I forgot to do something. If I want to change something, you go edit. I'm gonna go page setup because I want to change the size of my page. I want to set it up properly, so I'm gonna go with B, which is 34 by 22, and right now it's set up as a portrait, but I want landscape. So to do that, I'm gonna go printer setup, and then choose the orientation landscape. Click OK. Click OK. Click OK. And click OK. And this will take me to my sheet of paper. Okay, so now I'm gonna set this as a construction drawing. So we're gonna use a title box and also margin. To do that, we're gonna use the Themes and Notes tool. Click on it, and we're gonna look for the title block border. Click on that. It's gonna take automatically. It's gonna take the sizing of your page. So you just need to make sure you click on the center and click twice, because then it's asking you which angle. So we're gonna click it here. Click OK, and now we have our border. As by default, it comes with zones, but I don't usually use those zones because I actually don't know how to use those zones. So I'm gonna replace them, and I also want to add my my title box. So to do that, go into your object info window and then click on title block border settings. So in here, I'm gonna go into sheet zones and grids, and I'm gonna, in vertical zones, I'm gonna click 0 because I don't like the zones there, and also in the horizontal 0. And then here you can change the width of your border, but I'm gonna leave it at ½ an inch. That seems fine. And then in order to add your title block, you go into title block, you go import title block graphic, and here it's gonna give you an option. I think there's a couple of them here, but for the sake of simplicity, we're gonna keep the one that they show me here. Click OK, and you can constrain it to the top right or bottom right or whichever part of your paper you want it, but I'm gonna leave it at bottom right for now. And then click OK. As you can see now, I have my margin and I have my title block set up. To change the text in here, you double click on the title box, and then it's gonna ask you what is it that you want to edit. You click title blocks block layout, click OK, double click here, and now you can actually change the title of this. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it like that. And to exit, you just click on exit title block, edit. And here we go. Now we're ready. Next thing that we need to do is to create viewports. Viewports are the things that are gonna be imported into your printout page, sort of like a frame of the different objects that you want to bring in. So I'm gonna give you an example to make it a little clear. So we're gonna go back into our design layer. So to do that, we click on the arrow here, and we're gonna go design layer 1. Okay, so now I'm back onto my page. So say my first thing that I want to export into my drawing is the fall tree. So we're gonna create a bounding box around them, and you can use the polygon tool. The polygon tool is this one right here. So then you click on the area that you want to start, and then just create a polygon around it. we go. And then here you can change it to just normal, because we don't need the, we only need the outline of the box. And then, you know what, I'm gonna move this into my trees just because I'm not too sure if that works, but I'm gonna bring my frame into the trees because that's what I'm gonna export. So to change where an object is located, which layer located, because right now it's located in a design layer, you go into the object info and then change here to trees, and now it's on my tree layers, on my tree layer. So now to create a viewport, you highlight the square here, go into view and create detail viewport. You can name it here whatever you want. I'm just gonna leave it like that, and then here you can change the scale, but I'm gonna leave it at 1 to 500. So, and then it's gonna click OK, and now immediately it's gonna take you to your drawing and it's gonna place your viewport into your printout page. And that's how it works with viewports. I'm gonna go back because I'm gonna show you how to use, I'm gonna do another viewport. So I'm gonna go back to my design layer. I'm gonna make sure that now I'm gonna use the tiles. So I'm gonna go into the tiles layer, make a bounding box, this time not a polygon, just a bounding box. Again, we don't want a solid, we want just the outline. Highlight the box, go into view, create detail viewport. Again, I think you can change the name and you can change the scale, but I'm gonna leave it as is. Click OK, and now I have my other viewport. And in here, if you want to make this into a different scale, you only highlight it. You go into your object info window, and then here you can change it to say 1 to 100. And now you can, and it's gonna automatically resize it. And that's how you set up your printouts. Okay, and lastly, I'm gonna show you guys how to import georeference documents into your Vectorworks project. So to do that, I'm gonna go back to my design layer, and I'm gonna delete all of this because I don't need this anymore. Okay, say I'm gonna use some of my GIS now, and say I wanna bring in the bounding box, this bounding box that is highlighting all the neighborhoods in Winnipeg. Okay, so I know that already exists as a shapefile, so I'm gonna just import it into here, into my project. So I'm gonna create a new layer, call it Winnipeg. Again, it went to default, which is 1 to 1, and make sure that it is set up for georeferencing. So you right click, edit georeference, and click OK. Now we're ready. Now we're gonna import that shapefile. So we're gonna go File, Import Shapefile, and I'm gonna go look for it, which I'm pretty sure is in TN, and it's the 2011. And then you just highlight the only shapefile that you have there, click open. Now it's gonna ask you, do you want to create a new layer with this, or do you want to take it into an already existing layer? I usually go into the existing layer because I'm like, this is to be careful, because then I know that the Winnipeg layer is already set up with georeferencing, so I wanted to make a triple check that it's actually gonna work. So I'm gonna select Winnipeg, so that any other georeferencing is gonna be overridden by the setup that I already did with the document. So click on Winnipeg, click OK. It's gonna warn me that now whatever data is coming in is gonna be set up with the new coordinate system that we set up before. So, which is what we want. So we click OK. Now, because it's 1 to 1 and it's Winnipeg and it's georeference, it's probably not going to show immediately here. In order to find it, you can just click on this option at the top, which is Fit to Object, and now we can find it. So this is our map of Winnipeg. that is actually georeference. Say if I wanna bring something from, say, a query that I did from OpenStreetMaps. The way that I go about it is in my GIS, I will go, I'm gonna go by the site that you guys are gonna be working on, just to make it a little bit more specific. And say I wanna know, I'm gonna do the residential street maps, the residential streets around my area. So we're gonna do a query with quick OSM. So I know that the key is highway. And I know that the value is residential, and I want it only in the canvas extent, and I'm gonna run the query. Okay, now that is being successful, I close this, and if I hide my map, you can see that it's showing me all the residential areas around, to the extent of my canvas. So say I wanna, and I don't need the points, I just wanna go with the lines. Say I wanna import this into my Vectorworks. The way to do it is you go and you need to save this as a shapefile. So right click on the layer, make permanent, make sure it's a shapefile. Click on those three dots here so that you know where you're sending it. I'm gonna put this test2, I'm gonna call it, save, and then click OK. Now it's been transformed into a shapefile. So if I bring anything here, if I want to bring it into my Vectorworks, I'm going to create a new layer, call it residential streets, click OK. Again, making sure that my georeferencing is turned on. So I highlight it, go edit, click on the georeference, click OK. And now we're ready to import that shapefile. So we're going to go File, Import shapefile. I'm going to go look for it, which I think is here. And it's called test2. Yeah. Highlight it, open it. Again, it's going to ask you, do you want it to make a new layer? But we don't want to. We want to bring it into residential street because we know that georeference it's already turned on there. And then click OK. It's going to warn you again, but it's okay because we already we want that. So click OK. Now you can see that my streets have come into my map properly because they're georeferenced. So there you go. I think this is very helpful, especially if you guys are going to be working with plans that are already georeferenced. Then it's going to be more precise whenever you do any drawings here. Hope this helped. If not, you can email me. Be more than happy to answer any questions. Cheers.